Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts, sports journalist David Todd, and from SteelersDepot.com, Dave Bryan. Just a couple of Daves, chillin', talking Steelers. Now, here's Dave and Dave.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Dave. He's Dave Bryan of SteelersDepot.com, a place to get your latest and greatest Steelers information. And I'm David Todd at Season 9, Episode 43. And Dave, what happened? A power went out in Vegas for a day?
Yeah, they took my internets away. No internet, no TV. I'm on Cox Cable here, and never have had that issue. I've been a Cox subscriber for... Oh, geez. I mean, going back to Florida, a long time. Never, ever have had an issue this long a time. But, yeah, I had an outage start yesterday morning, and it just dragged and thought it was going to last a little bit longer today. But it just came up, and I figured let's go ahead and knock this thing out. I know a lot of people are clamoring for a pre-Ravens game podcast, if you will.
Yeah, better late than never. And it is Ravens week, and we talked to John on Wednesday and kind of went through where things were in the big picture. Injury report, we've talked about it. The Steelers have had a relatively good year on the injury front. What was the latest after Friday's practice?
Yeah, and we saw some things go in a different direction with a few guys. At the start of the week, we talked about possibly that Marcus Gilbert would be back this week, and while he did practice on Wednesday, he ended up going the opposite direction from there on out. And he ended the week with did not practice on Friday, and he's going to be out this week against Baltimore, and that means that Matt Filer once again is going to start in his play. He's actually officially listed as doubtful, but the Steelers never play guys that are doubtful. So go ahead and expect him to be out. That means Matt Filer going to probably once again get the start at right tackle. Also ending the week on the injury report with a game status designation, Cody Sensabaugh with a questionable designation. He, of course, injured his toe in the fourth quarter of that game against the Cleveland Browns. And then Artie Burns, who wasn't on the injury report until Friday, evidently twisted an ankle during practice, was added to the injury report as questionable. So we'll see what happens there. If I had to guess, and that's merely what it would be at this point, I would guess that Artie suits up and that Cody Sensabaugh doesn't. Cody was limited on Thursday, but he did practice fully on Friday. So, we'll see how that goes. Maybe both of them are able to get helmets there. Marquise Pouncey, and Ramon Foster both had days off during the week. They returned to practice fully on Friday. Ben Roethlisberger with that fractured finger was full on Thursday and Friday as well, too. And Cameron Hayward and Bud Dupree both missed time this past week with illnesses, and they appear good to go for Sunday as well.
Yeah, so look, like we've said, we'll see Filer. Obviously the offensive line has been great for the past month, and you can pick whoever you want to be responsible for the Steelers' success of late, whether it's James Conner or the offensive line, but certainly some combination of the two. The line's been great, and Filer has stepped in, and just looking bigger picture, we talked about this before, with Ramon Foster being done after this year, and then the Steelers are going to have a bunch of guys on that offensive line done after 2020. It is interesting to see. We saw it with Chris Hubbard last year, stepped in at right guard at right tackle, and ended up getting a big contract from the Browns. We'll see how that plays out for Ramon this year and for Marcus Gilbert and others next year. It's hard to imagine. For me, it's hard to imagine that Ramon Foster or Marcus Gilbert's going to be getting another contract after this one. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, Marcus Gilbert's still under contract after this season, I believe. So
right, yeah, he has 1 year left.
But that's the thing. You're going to pay him $6 million a season to miss 4 games a year. That's
I don't think so. I don't think Ramon had a line in some article. It sounded like he said, they're going to have to pay me a ton of dough to stick around. Okay, you got BJ Finney, you got other guys. You drafted a tackle in the third round this year. We're going to start to see some transition, but there's no question the offensive line has been a huge strength for this team over the past 3 or 4 years.
And I understand given Ramon that, even though it ended up, it actually ended up being less than what I thought it would be this last time around for Ramon. But, he was still under, I think, 30 at the time, so it made sense to do all that. You would have to think that the Steelers aren't going to, regardless of what Ramon says, you would have to think that the Steelers aren't going to come out unless they can get Ramon another 3-year bargain basement deal, lock him up that long. And look, let's see how the rest of this season plays out as well too, because Ramon the last several seasons has missed a few games, and he's just at that age right now and has had the history where he's going to probably likely miss a few games. I just don't see the Steelers paying him bank, if you will, based on all that. I would bet you that they wouldn't. They'll let him probably test free agency, but does Ramon really want to go anywhere else? The answer is no. He really doesn't. And is he going to be able to get the extra, $2-3 million for one season in order to do that? And the thing with Marcus Gilbert is you're going to have to decide. You drafted Chooks this year. The jury's obviously still out on Gerald Hawkins, but he's still under contract. So there's 2 tackles right there. Yep. And then you have Matt Filer, and Matt Filer obviously hasn't disappointed, and he can probably play all 3 positions for you as well too. So if I was a betting man, or no, I am a betting man, but if I was to place a bet, on that right now, I would say Marcus Gilbert and Ramon Foster won't be back.
They're not.
Next season.
Neither of them are getting another contract. They just really can't see it happening. We've talked about it. Ramon, obviously the Steelers, it was a team friendly deal for Ramon to stick around for this contract. And he's in his third. Look, the offensive line is the one position maybe of all the positions on the field where age probably benefits you at some level for experience and continuity on the offensive line, but. For Ramon, I would think it would have to take a deal like they had, and Gilbert, for him, it would be such a big pay cut for him to, come back to that level. Difficult to imagine.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm just going to transition real quickly into the Baltimore Ravens injury report here. You want to talk about an offensive line that's beat up right now? It's theirs. James Hurst is going to miss the game with a back injury. Ronnie Stanley, their other tackles, out of this game as well too. And Alex Lewis, one of their guards, is questionable for this game with a neck. So, you want to talk about this offensive line of the Ravens being extremely vulnerable. It's this weekend. Now, we have in the past, especially last year, I think a couple of times talked about, oh boy, the Steelers have a vulnerable offensive line that they're going up against, I think at least 2 times last year, and that didn't work out so good. I think one of those times was against the Jaguars, and the other time, I don't know, was it Minnesota or I don't remember the game. Maybe it was Chicago. It was a Chicago game, I think, early in the season that they had all those guys out, and they ran that outside zone down the Steelers' throats there. So, it just goes to show you that teams have backups for a reason, and a lot of these depth guys, are expected to be next men up mentality. So we'll see how that plays out for them definitely on Sunday. But it certainly does tilt, in the Steelers' favor at both tackle spots with both Ronnie Stanley and James Hurst out of this game. Now, questionable for them, Bradley Bozeman, another backup offensive lineman for them. Alex Collins, their running back. Remember, this is a Baltimore Ravens team that just traded for Ty Montgomery this past week. Maybe we know a little bit more about the reason why with him. That would be a huge miss if they don't have Alex Collins for that game Sunday against the Steelers. You want to talk about another huge miss? Marlon Humphrey is questionable with a thigh. We talked to our buddy John Eisenberg, and it didn't sound too hopeful. And Jimmy Smith obviously hasn't been the same Jimmy Smith this year, so that would be another key injury for them. Tony Jefferson, a starting safety for them, questionable with a hamstring. C.J. Mosley, starting linebacker, questionable for them, and Tim Williams is out with an ankle there as well too. And there's two other, Jordan Lasley with a hamstring, a backup wide receiver, into the week as questionable as well too. So you want to talk about a banged up bunch? It's the Baltimore Ravens on Sunday.
Yeah, the Steelers have gotten a couple teams like that now. Obviously, the Bengals banged up, the Falcons a little banged up when they came into town. And yeah, so Dave, here we go into this game. The Steelers they've been able to run a balanced offense. They've been able to move the ball on the ground of late, with Connor having a couple big games. They didn't, to me, I know my perspective of what happened in the first Ravens game is a little bit different than most people. Steelers obviously didn't play well early in that game. I thought the defense played okay, but they were definitely the bend don't break, but they needed better than that, late in the game, and they weren't able to get turnovers. They weren't really able to get the ball back from the Ravens. The Ravens sustained some long drives. So the Steelers come out this game, same thing, look to run Connor and spread the ball around with the receiving core.
I think you have to get Connor going in this game early. When you look at all this stuff this year with the whole, Connor filling in for Bell, I think the thing that sticks out the most, David, is the fact that Connor has been more of a second half guy or a late second quarter guy into the second half guy than he has early in drives. In fact, I went back this past week and looked at his first 5 runs of the last 4, 5, 6 games or what have you, and it's not great at all. The successful play rate, I think, of the first 5 runs of the first, I think of all first, how many games they play? 7 games. So 35 runs in total. Now, of course, some of these runs ended up, the first 5 ended up being in the second half. If you remember, like Kansas City, maybe even a game against Baltimore as well, too. I don't have it in front of me right now, but his successful run percentage on those overall, on those 35 runs is not great. I think he had 2 explosive runs in total, one for 30 and one for 20 or 23 or something like that. But outside of that, it really hasn't been anything to write home about. Quite a few lost yardage plays in there, quite a few 1, 2-yard gains or whatnot. So I really would like to see them, if they can, try to establish James Conner earlier in the game and try to get him some success. And one thing that we saw or have seen so far this year with James Conner is the power, right? I mean, the pulling of the offensive lineman. You and I talked extensively about that, especially with the, 12 runs or so that they pulled an offensive lineman against the Browns. I think I would come out right away and try to run that power with him instead of just trying to run that, that 38 straight or 18 straight or whatever 14 straight, whatever they usually like to try to run early in games, or those split zone runs that we see them try to run early in games as well too. So that would be my suggestion for Randy Fichtner when it comes to the script is get some power runs in there for James Conner.
Yeah, it's basically for the offense right now, it's don't mess with anything that's working like this and moving the ball around. One of the things about the receivers in the last game, Ben didn't have a monster big numbers because they were able to move the ball effectively on the ground. And so, a bunch of guys end up with 70 yards receiving. The AB with 2 touchdowns. Juju, didn't have, Juju's been a little bit quiet of late. Connor obviously out of the backfield, a bunch of catches, and we'll see. You mentioned James Washington, and is he going to get an opportunity to step up? And because if they again, I'm not expecting it. I'm not even expecting it at any point this year. But if they're able to add another weapon to this offense, if James Washington comes in, and as you've been talking about all season, they're able to actually connect on some deep passes to James Washington, have a little bit more of a threat to take the top off. Not that obviously AB and Juju can do that to some degree, but they're not just pure speed guys. If Washington shows that he could be kind of that guy, even if Justin Hunter can be that guy a little bit, then it's just going to open things up more for this offense, which has been, starting to be the offense we've been looking for all season.
Well, I tell you what you don't want to have happen is a repeat stat sheet of what we saw back in Week 4 against the Ravens. If you remember, Ryan Switzer was your leading pass catcher as far as number of receptions went. 7 catches for 32 yards.
Yeah.
You don't want that. AB had 5 for 62. He did have the touchdown, in that game. And then, of course, you had remember that one went off the rails right off quick because you had the completion of Vance McDonald that was ripped away for a turnover there. I mean, just definitely don't need that kind of start that you had last time around against the Ravens, where you turn around and you're 14-0 down with like 8:03 left in the first quarter. We talked several times about how this offense just not starting fast outside of the game, really against the Falcons where they scored on their first 2 possessions. That's been it. Even though they did get a reasonable kind of fast start against the Bengals, it wasn't fast enough, really, to quite honest with you. You would like to see them start taking these opening drives, and at the very least, with the first time they touch the football, coming out of it with 3 points there. And I think they're going to have to do this in this game, because make no mistake about it, this is still a Ravens defense, even though their offense probably isn't going to be at full strength. And obviously their defense could be without a guy like Marlon Humphrey this time around. This still is a good defense top to bottom when it talks to the Ravens. So I don't really see, a ton of Steeler offensive points being scored in this game. Now, can they get the defense to provide them a few short fields? That's something else that we talked about a few times so far this season. And really, I bet if you go back through some podcasts over the years, we've had quite a few discussions about why can't this offense seem to get at least 1 or 2 drives a game to start on the opposition's side of the 50-yard line. Mike Tomlin talked about it on Tuesday quite a bit. We need more turnovers on defense. And they certainly do. This would be a great game to start that. And back to your point about James Washington here, we'll see if he suits up. He practiced. He seemingly got more reps, according to reports this week in practice. Man, it would be a great week to get him on track.
Yeah, absolutely. And the turnovers too, again, this is we've seen the defense improve, and talk about everything they did last week at getting at the quarterback and the games for Bud Dupree. Ever since we've been calling him Alvin, I've been calling him Alvin, but Alvin has lit it up a little bit. If those guys can get, if they could get a couple turnovers, this defense obviously would be taking a big step forward. But yeah, they haven't had short fields. We've talked about how good the punters have been against the Steelers. I mean, look, Switzer had a good game in the return game, other than he and Rosie Nix botching that free kick. And that's been a big plus this season for sure. But yeah, lack of turnovers has certainly been something that, dropped interceptions. We've talked about it, for years and years and years. I can't catch the ball. They've had guys who couldn't catch the ball. Hayden made the great interception last week, but, a little bit more of that out of those guys would be a big help for the offense.
I really think they need at least 2 drives in this game to start outside of their own 45-yard line, and then of course on possibly into Ravens territory. I think they're going to need at least 2 of those in this game. Maybe Switzer. And look, I mean, you talk about the special teams unit. Why shouldn't the Ravens special teams unit be good? I mean, John Harbaugh, that's his roots, right? I mean, you would expect it. And how it seems like we've been talking about Sam Cook for the whole entire life of this podcast. And Justin Tucker's obviously Justin Tucker, so you don't expect to have too many opportunities with those special teams units of the Ravens to be able to flip the field in any situation. So if you don't get that, if you don't block a punt, if you don't return a punt, past your own 45-yard line, then where's the other good field position going to have to come from? Well, it's going to have to come from a defensive turnover. So I firmly believe, at least, like I said, 2 Steelers offensive possessions, this weekend on Sunday need to happen from their own 45-yard line and of course greater, towards the Baltimore end of the field, because I just that Ravens defense is stout, and I don't expect that to change this weekend.
So what do you think the situation is going to be at corner opposite Hayden? You think it's going to be Cody Sensabaugh? You think he's going to get the start?
God, I don't have the foggiest, man. I really don't. I mean, he ends up going full? What did I say? He went full. Let me see here. Cody, both him and Burns ended up as questionable. Cody Sensabaugh went full on Friday, but was limited on Thursday and did not practice on Wednesday. So, I mean,
it's hard to imagine that we're sitting here in week, whatever it is, 9, worrying whether Cody Sensabaugh can make the start, because it's going to make a difference, right? I mean, Cam Sutton hasn't. I actually don't know who I'd have more faith in right now, Artie Burns or Cam Sutton on the other corner.
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, and Artie went limited just on Friday, so one would hope and think that ankle would maybe they'll have both of them. I don't know. I think if both of them dress, then I think you're going to see both of them platoon again. Talking about Sensabaugh and Artie Burns. Now, what happens if Sensabaugh's down? I think, and Artie dresses, I think you play Artie at that point. I'm not sure you want to roll Cameron Sutton right out there. Maybe you platoon or Cameron Sutton and Artie if both those guys are up this week. I know this. I'd be willing to bet that not one corner opposite Joe Hayden plays the entire 100% snaps.
Yep.
That's really going out on a limb with that one, but they need to figure that out over there. And here's the thing: is this the type of game where you pick? Are those Ravens receivers all kind of equal enough where you just leave Joe Hayden on his side, or do you John Brown?
I think you're not going to have him follow Crabtree or John Brown or anybody. Look, Mike Hilton has proved more than adequate in the slot, so you leave the guys where they are, and certainly if there are injuries, even less kind of potential for disruption. I'd absolutely leave the guys where they are. I have to tell you, one of the things coming out of that game last week that surprised me the most is were Hayden's comments about Morgan Burnett and how he can play every position, and he adds a great deal in terms of the communication and everything going on in the back end of things. Very positive comments from Hayden about Burnett.
And you and I talked the other day about the dime personnel that they used in that game, and I told you that I was going to get some, get a few stats for you on that, and I have done that. And from that game against the Browns, that is the first time we have seen in a Steelers uniform a dime personnel package that included Morgan Burnett, L.J. Fort, and Cameron Sutton. And I'm not Cameron Sutton, Mike Hilton. And that turned out to be a fantastic package. Now, I don't know what you thought about the final drive and what your views on a final game out of reach drive. But I will tell you this: in total, Burnett and L.J. Fort were on the field together against the Browns for 21 plays in total, and that included the failed 2-point play there at the very end of the game. The other 20 plays that Burnett and Fort were both on the field for, the Steelers defense allowed 9 receptions for 100 yards and a touchdown on 18 total dropbacks. Now, 7 of those 9 receptions for 75 of those 100 yards came during that Browns' final offensive possession. Once again, I want to make sure that we put this in context because, let's face it, that final drive was meaningless by the Browns, and you don't know what the defense was told. Were they told just to keep everything in front of them?
Sure, absolutely. Just make the clock run and, don't give up a 50-yard play.
Right, so it's forgivable that. Now, on the previous 11, what we would call meaningful dime personnel snaps that included Hilton, Fort, and Burnett, let me get my place here. In the first 3 quarters of the game, only 2 passes were completed for 25 yards. The first one of those came on that opening drive when they did not get the containment on Baker Mayfield. He rolls out to his right and he hits the wide receiver on the run for 21 yards. That really should have been a sack, and Alex Kozora broke that down for us this past week of how Tuitt got stuck inside there. It caused Cam Hayward to have to try to get contained on the outside and couldn't get there. So that's one of the plays. The other completion came on a 3rd and 12 play that gained all of 4 yards. So, basically the 2 completions, the meaningful completions that they gave up in dime personnel, one was a failed 3rd down play and the other one was a quarterback making a play, breaking containment. Now, they did have one other successful play on Sunday against the Steelers dime personnel on a drop back, and that came on a 3rd and 5 play with 8:55 left in the second quarter, and that of course was Baker Mayfield breaking containment for the scramble for the first down. So I guess what I'm getting at here, what I've been kind of angling at all week here is there's reason to be a little bit excited about this dime personnel, and I think this will be another great game to chart, because what did Mike Tomlin say during his Tuesday press conference? He said, possession downs, possession downs, possession downs, both offensively and defensively. That game against the Ravens is where they lost the ball game at, was possession downs.
Could not get out what the Ravens killed it on 3rd down. Steelers, and that's why I hesitatingly say I thought the defense played okay because they didn't give up touchdowns, but they couldn't get off the field on 3rd down.
Right, and in total, the Ravens were 8 of 17 on 3rd downs in that game. Do you remember what the Steelers were in that game?
Like 1 of 12, 2 of 12, something like that.
2 of 12. Good answer. You now advance to the bonus round, David Todd. But quite honestly, when like I said, it will be good to go back and look at this game at dime personnel and see how the Steelers stood up against the Ravens offense, especially on the possession downs. I think that could be a difference in this game. And, I've been saying for the last 3 shows with you, it's a little bit too early to get excited about this defense right now after, this 3-game winning streak or whatnot that they're on. If they have another good game this week and that dime personnel stays healthy and is a big reason of why they're winning these possession downs, then maybe I'm going to change my tune by Monday morning as the Steelers start preparing for their short week. So I really think, regardless of who plays corner opposite Joe Hayden, I think where the nuts and bolts of this thing is going to be at is with his dime personnel on Sunday.
As president of the LJ Fort fan club, I'm a huge fan of that, and we've seen a little bit of the changing of the personnel and maybe the Morgan Burnett hire. Look, we talked about John Bostic, and we haven't mentioned John Bostic's name in probably the whole week. I mean, he's a guy who has quietly done more or less what you'd like him to do or what the Steelers expected him to do. And now maybe Morgan Burnett becomes a bigger part of the bigger player of the 2 off-season signings. These 2 guys who are hopefully going to come in and stabilize this defense. And obviously maybe the data there's not enough data in to judge Burnett at this point, but maybe they actually do look like they're both reasonably good signings and can stabilize this defense. But yeah, this will be the test. Look, this isn't a dynamic Ravens offense. You've got 3 receivers who each have 30 catches, for 400 yards ish. I mean, but there are 3 guys who, in the first time around, Joe Flacco looked good, and the Ravens receivers looked as good as they've looked. Let's put it that way, playing against the Steelers. And we saw in the one game against Tennessee, since that game, the Ravens defense had a monster game. But, they played well against New Orleans, but they got taken apart last week, as John told us. Particularly, Carolina's not – you don't think of Carolina as the most dynamic offense. Cam's a wild card every week out there. But you would think the Steelers, can go in and make this game, they got to go in and make this game competitive. Look, if they can really set up the second half of their season with the win here. With a loss, we're just going to be, it's going to be the same conversations. The schedule gets really difficult with some of these games, and we've talked about the high power names that they play in the second half of the season. The Saints, the Patriots, the Chargers, Carolina coming up. We didn't talk about the fact that they also have to go to Denver and to Oakland. Those are games you kind of we didn't mention because those teams aren't quite as good as the other teams. But if they lose this game, the whole thing is the whole thing's going to be up in the air either way. But if they can come out of this game with a win, they've certainly put themselves in a great spot for the balance of the season.
Well, there's going to be a lot of different ways we could go with the narrative probably after this game on Sunday against the Ravens. If they win, let's say they win 29 to 13, then it's going to be, well, look at all the injuries that the Ravens had in this game. This is a game that the Steelers probably should have won. I can hear that narrative being thrown around. What did we really learn about the Steelers against a banged-up Baltimore team that hasn't been great in their last 3 games? That bah humbug. That kind of narrative. Or it could be the Steelers squeaked out a close one here. Maybe they're not as bad as what we thought, even though it was against a banged up Ravens team. Or if it's a close loss, just the same thing there. Or if they lose in the kind of a same manner that they did back in Week 4, there's going to be people calling for Tomlin and Colbert to be fired and Art Rooney to sell the team and move it to Portland again, and the whole locker room's lost again, and that kind of thing. So really, you could envision, because of just looking at the shape of the Ravens roster right now, and because of looking at what happened back there in Week 4, you could. I don't know which way the narrative is going to be on Monday when we're talking about this game. Now, in lieu of me, trying to sell you, David, what can I do to put you into this Steelers win on Sunday against the Ravens? Some undercoating. Here's something for you to remember, David Todd. The Steelers, once again, remember, they did not have Mike Hilton in that first meeting against the Ravens as well. We just got done talking about Morgan Burnett and L.J. Ford. And look, maybe that loss to the Ravens ended up being good from the aspect of when Vince Williams went down late with a hamstring in that game. We got to see L.J. Fort on the field in some meaningless snaps that he played quite fantastic in. Maybe that's what kind of has led to him now to being put in this package, now what we expect to see with the dime on Sunday against the Ravens. So, I think at this point, there is a lot of reason to be optimistic, I think, about the Steelers heading into this game.
Do we take a break for the Le'Veon Bell portion of the podcast?
Sure.
And that was a Le'Veon Bell portion of the podcast there from our sponsors. Anything to say about Le'Veon Bell?
I don't get all this talk about rescinding the tag and all at this point. I mean, obviously, I don't know when he's going to show. He might not ever show up at this point here. I know there's a Patriots beat writer talking about, already saying that the Steelers would or should or will rescind Bell's tag. I don't know what you get out of all that. I just think you make it maybe.
No, you don't get anything out of that. What's the point?
I just think you make it incredibly hard for him to come back. Look, I mean, if James Conner goes down with a knee injury, God forbid, this week, there are going to be people hoping that Le'Veon Bell shows up, right?
Yeah, yes.
I
Yes.
mean, James Conner has been fantastic. Make no mistake about it. We already did talk about, though. Look, I mean, the explosive runs. There's not a lot not to like about what James Conner has done this year. The only real thing is something we already highlighted early in the show, and that's the fast starts. And really, has Le'Veon Bell been a fast starter either? During his career, and I think really the answer to that might be no. Early on in first quarters of games. He seems to have followed kind of the same or had the same path that James Conner is having right now early in games. But with that said, and I said this several weeks ago, you can never have too many good players. So, if he reports, do you just, make it? Hey, look, even if he reported Monday, he's not playing against Carolina. So he's not going to probably play the week after that against Jacksonville. I mean, when is he going to suit up if he reports on Monday anyway, or by the
he play the Jacksonville game. He would play that game for sure.
You think
assuming he's in some, he's done what you would expect. He's done some level of keeping himself reasonably fit. Yeah, I mean, 11 days, or a full week of practice coming out off the Thursday game, I would think he'd be dressed for that game.
Okay, maybe he would be, but I mean, you're not going to play him probably more than 10 snaps or so, 12 snaps, right? Or would you?
No, I think that's right. I mean, look, he's certainly not getting the starting job 2 weeks from now. So, and we're going to have a lot more data on James Conner. The Steelers go out for whatever reason and lay an egg against the Ravens, and they're 0-2 against the Ravens on the season, and then turn around at home on a Thursday night and don't play well against Carolina. Like you said, look, that 2 more games in the books, 2 more data points, more information on James Conner, more information on the Steelers offense, and more information on where the team is going. That's going to impact all the decision making about how many snaps Le'Veon Bell would get if and when he does show up. So again, it's been a fascinating storyline, but it's amazing how what's interesting is Juju was the spotlight guy last year, no doubt. I mean, he kind of in the second half of the season he kind of broke onto the scene and was a charismatic, very young guy. Who took not just Pittsburgh, but the city by storm. And James Conner has done very much the same thing the first half of this season. He is the darling of Pittsburgh for sure right now. And I asked yesterday, I did a poll question, who is the most popular Steeler? Is it Ben, AB, Juju, or James Conner? And I think if you had done this toward the end of last season, the answer, obviously not the best player. It's not asking. The most popular player for sure toward the end of last season was Juju. There's no doubt in my mind in the poll. I will pull up the answers to the poll. But it's still open, but in the middle of the day yesterday, there were over 1,000 votes. It's smokingly into James Conner's advantage. Let's see. 58% for Conner with over 1,000 votes, 58% for Conner, 29% for Juju, 7% for AB, and 6% for Ben. Yeah, it's James Conner's world right now.
Well, right, and it's a great story too. I mean, how can you not root for the guy right now? What's happening to him is the type of stuff they make movies out of.
And they will for sure.
It really is. I mean, it's that kind of story here. Now, we have since, Aditi Kinkle-Bala put out some misinformation on Twitter the other day, and about what may or may not happen with Bell if he sits out, the entire season.
I didn't really understand that because she had gotten it right before. I didn't understand all of a sudden. Out of the blue, kind of talking about compensation with first and third round pick, and blah, blah, blah. It was confusing to put that out.
The main confusion still at this point is whether or not that what his franchise tag amount would be next year. If he sits out, would it indeed be the quarterback tag number, or would it be kind of a toll situation where it's 14 point whatever it was this year? And to be quite honest with you, my Joel Corey, the guy that the one guy that you should trust the most in this right now, who I have had on the show to talk about and interviewed several times on this, isn't still sure right now. I just DM'd him the other day after this Aditi mess, and I asked him, and he says, "Look, the franchise tag provisions seem to contradict each other regarding this situation. I'll try to get some clarification from team and union sources I trust." So even he right now, look, here's the thing. People that are saying that that Le'Veon Bell needs the accrued season for free agency, that's BS. He was already a free agent, an unrestricted free agent this year. That's why he got the tag. So it's not going to determine whether or not he is a unrestricted free agent by him showing up this year. The big question with right now with whether or not he shows up is related to what his tag amount would be next year if he doesn't. In other words, is it still considered to be a third tag? And if it is indeed considered a third tag, even though he did not report and sign the second one, is it quarterback money, which comes with a third consecutive tag on any player? They get the quarterback tag amount. Or is it still considered technically a second consecutive situation because he did not show up and sign his first one, and thus are we in a tolling situation, which means that the Steelers could exclusively franchise tag him again at $14.544 million. That is the biggest unknown that we're not getting a clear answer on right now. And yes, they could use a transition tag and all like that, but really that transition tag is flimsy, right? I mean, what does a transition tag give you other than the ability to match what another team signs your guy to an offer sheet to, and there's no compensation involved if they do sign him away. So to me, a transition tag, all it does is just tie up time and cap money for the Steelers next year. To me, unless you just wanted to totally mess with Le'Veon Bell or think that he's not going to get a deal that you can't match, that meets the terms and the percentage of guaranteed money that the Steelers like to pay and yada yada. To me, it makes no sense to use a transition tag on him next year if given the opportunity to. Now, would you consider franchise tagging him again at $14.554 million? If James,
no, look, they are moving on. We don't even need to waste anybody's time. They're moving on. James Conner's the guy. They'll probably draft another running back. Le'Veon Bell's not getting any money, not getting another contract offer or any more money from the Steelers, right?
I wouldn't think so at this point. I think he's worn out his welcome right now at this point, especially if James Conner stays healthy and does what he's doing. I just don't see anything way around it at this time. You have to let Le'Veon Bell go at this point, I think, and hope that he does go and sign a lucrative contract somewhere so you can get third round value in as far as compensatory pick goes. That would be my recommendation at this point.
All right, let's get on to it. Get to pick about. How about my bookie? Guys, watching football is fun. Big weekend. We're doing this Saturday morning. We don't often do these on Saturday, but a huge college football weekend for massive playoff implications. LSU, Alabama kind of leading the card. And we've been talking about my bookie all season long. Whether you're an expert or a rookie, you should be betting at my bookie. These kind of guys, look, it depends how you want to play. You want to play big like Dave? Go down there, put down the big thing on each game, just roll it into big money. He's had 2 massive weeks against the man. Or you can play smaller bets, parlays, turn it into something. Fantasy, over-unders. You got all sorts of things you can do. And with hockey going on, NBA going on, it's a perfect time of year to get involved. And this is the last day, probably the last time you'll hear from us about their offer of 100% bonus for another week. For your initial deposit up to $1,000. Been thinking about getting involved. Now you feel like it's time to get that Thanksgiving and Christmas money rolled up. This is the time. You can follow these guys at BetMyBookie on Twitter and Instagram. They respond to all mentions and DMs. They've given away $10,000 already in free money this season. Use our promo code Terrible Podcast. They're going to match your initial deposit, as we've been talking about all season long, up to $1,000. So use the promo code Terrible. You get your first deposit matched 100%. You play, you win, you get paid. Dave, we didn't actually hit the Thursday game this time. For a change for you, for sure.
Yeah, but it was worth it. Look, a streak is made to come to an end at some point, right? and it was fun to watch that game the other night, even though it wasn't really a competitive game. But you see the young kid Mullins come basically out of nowhere and have the game that he did, albeit against the team like the Raiders. That, oh my, I don't know what you thought about the Raiders heading into the season. I obviously didn't think they were gonna be a Super Bowl team or anything along those lines. But with Gruden coming in and some of the free agent signings that they had, I thought they'd be pretty decent this year. The Raiders, oh Lord, they're a mess right now, and that's just 1 year into the Gruden contract. It looks like Gruden's kind of lost touch, if you will. I mean, what are they even going to do with Carr at this point? I mean, do they have to kind of figure out maybe if Carr is going to be their guy moving forward? And if not, are they going to have to take a quarterback early next year? And what are they going to? I mean, is Oakland going to be the landing spot for Le'Veon Bell next year? Just so many questions related to him. But I think it was enjoyable to see such a young kid like Mullins come in there and I guess refreshing and have kind of the game that he had. And my boy George Kittle, that was a heck of a game for him. Good to see him have another good game as well, too. But, yeah, both of us were on the Raiders thinking that was going to be a free money situation there. And the man.
It wasn't.
No, it wasn't. The man
didn't have to sweat it out in the fourth quarter.
No, there is no backdoor happening in that one. The man giveth and the man taketh away.
All right. So, how about Michael Jordan promo in the NFL for this matchup on Sunday night? Have you seen these ads with, maybe you haven't with that power being out, but with Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers?
Yeah. I mean, that should be a great game, right? I mean, I've heard Belichick interviewed on Sirius a few times, or on the one time he was on Sirius earlier this week talking about it. I mean, two great quarterbacks going at each other and two defenses that aren't great. I mean, this one might hit, I don't know, this one might hit 70 or 80 points when it's all said and done.
All right, so Detroit at Minnesota. Minnesota -6, leading things off. Give me the Vikes. The air went out of the place. A couple of my friends were at the Vikings game last week against the Saints. Big game. Thielein's had a look. He's absolutely on track to be first team All-Pro. It would be interesting to see who's the guy opposite him. Right now, it wouldn't be Antonio Brown, but big fumble return for the Saints. They come out with a win. So we've talked about the moves the Lions made and the Packers made, trading guys away in a division that still seems a little bit up in the air. Got to think the Vikings are the favorites, but if you're the favorites, you got to win this game. Give me the Vikes -6.
Man, this is a strange game, right? Especially like you said. I mean, what are the Lions doing, kind of selling off players, if you will, at this point? I mean, they got a great quarterback there. Big game, big divisional game for both these teams. Obviously, with that I mean, you got Chicago leading that division right now. Who would have thought that? At the start of the year here. 6 to me is a little bit too much when you got Matthew Stafford involved here, David. So give me the Lions +6 on the road.
Chiefs -10 at Cleveland. Give me the Chiefs.
Oh boy, and they're gonna. I think the Browns have a few extra injury issues on the defensive side of the ball. The Chiefs rounding into form a little bit on the defensive side of the ball. Hey, welcome to being a head coach again, Greg Williams. You're gonna get it handed to you by Andy Reid. I'll give you the Chiefs. Lay those 10 points.
Bucks at the Panthers. Panthers at home. Going to be a short week for them, obviously, with the Steelers on Thursday night. This is look. I'm a fan of Fitzmagic. I don't think the Bucks defense is anything, but a shootout. Carolina wins, but I'll take the 6.5 points.
This is a weird game as well, too. Buccaneers. I mean, do the Buccaneers have the best top-to-bottom wide receiver crew in the NFL?
If they're healthy, they're pretty damn good.
I mean, they really are. I mean, and you're talking about Chris Godwin in that bunch too. I mean, as kind of your number 4 guy, right? So I mean, I really think they got a good wide receiver core there. So give me Tampa Bay for the outright win here. So I want those 6.5 points on the road.
Jets go on the road to Miami. I said it for a while now. I think the Jets are the second best team in that division, which might not be saying a lot, but I'll take the 2.5 points on the road. Jets over the Dolphins, and the Dolphins are a bit of an unknown still. We're kind of hard team to put a gauge on.
Yeah, I don't know what to think about this one as well too. Tannehill has some sort of a shoulder capsule injury or something right now.
They got to move on from him. He just it hasn't been terrible, but it hadn't been good.
Yeah.
Next, who's next?
You know what? Give me the Jets to win this outright. So I'll take those points.
Atlanta, Washington. Washington, a team nobody talks about. You got Alex Smith at quarterback. It's a team that's Adrian Peterson at running back. A team that haven't gotten much attention, but they've been solid. And they've been in there. And the Falcons, they finally kind of put some things a little bit together. This is a very big game for both teams. I mean, the loser of this game is maybe they write their season off. I think the Skins are better than people give them credit for. I'll take them at home -1.
I know better than to take Matty Ice on the road. I know better than that, but I can't stop myself. Give me Falcons to win this outright. I want the Falcons plus the point.
All right, Bills +10 at home against the Bears. Trubisky's been better, but that 10 better on the road? No, give me the Bills.
Give me the Bears to get out the quarterback in this, and I'll take the Bears to lay the 10 on the road. That's a big number on the road.
The Texans for real -1 at Denver. I'll take Denver +1 at home.
Boy, Watson sure looked good. That most recent game. Demaryius Thomas now switching uniforms. Didn't even have to leave Denver for this game. This just sets up too perfect for Houston, in my opinion. So give me Houston lay the point on the road.
Chargers at the Seahawks. I love Phillip Rivers and the Chargers this year. I'll take him -1.
This is the game that's gonna. You want to talk about is Seattle a playoff contending team? We're going to find out, I think, for sure this week. I'd like Seattle to win this one by a late field goal at home, David. So give me the Seahawks plus the point at home against the Chargers.
Saints getting 2 at home against the Rams. There's your marquee 425 game. Most people would consider right this second the 2 best teams in the NFC. Hard to ever go against the Rams, but if you're going to do it in the dome with the Saints. Give me 2 at home with Drew Brees.
Yeah, give me 2 at home with Drew Brees as well too. I don't know, maybe the Rams win this by a point or something. Maybe a missed field goal or something plays a role in this one. But yeah, if you want to talk about a team that has a chance to knock off the Rams, this might be it. So give me the Saints at home plus the 2.
Pats -5.5 on Sunday night. We talked about it. That's not enough. Green Bay's they're actually not that good. Rodgers is good. Green Bay's not that good. 5.5 isn't enough. I'll take the Patriots.
Wow, I'm gonna go on the other side of the fence just because of Aaron Rodgers and those wide receivers, and I just don't think that Patriots defense is good enough at times. And if the Packers are healthy in this one, they should be able to score some points. The thing is will their defense be able to stop Tom Brady and what goes on the other side? I think it'll be enough. I think the Packers can win this one too. So give me Packers plus the 5.5 on the road.
Titans +5 on Monday night at Dallas. Okay.
There's some weird games this week, right?
Yeah, there are these 5.5, 5-point lines. Okay, I'll take Dak on Monday night on national television.
Tennessee coming off a bye, right? After the London, should have won that game maybe late as well too. I think Tennessee sneaks up on them here, David. So I'm not necessarily that they'll win this game, but I think it's a field goal game. So give me Tennessee plus the 5.
So Pittsburgh at Baltimore. Steelers have not been great in Baltimore. I think they are an improving team, and I think this will be a good close game. And I don't often pick the Steelers based on heart. We've seen enough to know exactly what kind of team they are. But I think they are a getting better team that might, if they're able to win this game, be able to be in the conversation with the Chiefs, the Patriots, and the Chargers for me as the three best teams in the AFC. Steelers win this game on the road. They're in that conversation. I think they're going to win this game on the road. I give it to them 24-20, Dave.
Do you think this one stays at 2 come kickoff time?
Yeah, I do.
I do too as well, and I think this is going to come down. I think this is going to be a game that the man has a great pulse on until very, very late. I think the Steelers can win this game, and I think they can win it by more than a touchdown too. And I'm going to say that they win it by more than a touchdown because of a late interception for a touchdown, a pick six, a punt return for a touchdown, something like that. So give me the Steelers 29-20 over the Ravens. This will be a 2-point game up until late. So be prepared to have your handkerchief to wipe the sweat off late here because you'll need it. But I think the Steelers come away with a 9-point win in this. And if they don't, like I said, it'll be interesting to see what kind of narrative we're talking about on Monday because I can see it going in about 8 different directions as we sit here pregame on Saturday.
All right, our Saturday edition of the Terrible Podcast in the can.
Yeah, absolutely, and we appreciate the patience there. Once again, internet technical issues here in Las Vegas caused it on my end here, but at least we got it done and in the can for you. You should have this by Saturday by noon. We're hoping. So you can follow me on Twitter at Steelers Depot. Follow David Todd on Twitter at David M. Todd. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. If you like what we do and you want to donate to the cause, go to SteelersDepot.com, hit donate in the upper right navigational bar. And if you want to have an ad-free version of SteelersDepot.com, go to the site and hit ad-free, and you can purchase one of those for $25 for a calendar year as well. And David Todd and I, barring the municipality collapsing again in Las Vegas, we'll be back at you on Monday.
As always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Dave.